Welcome everyone to today's training seminar, week 4 of Living Anatomy's Secret Language, Alive Treatments, Polarity Therapy and Amino Acids. Today's topic we will be covering is on the PT, Peace and Tranquility, which was also number 8, and WW Wu Wei, Concentration and Memory, number 9. Also the ovals and where they are in the secret language of our anatomy. Vital Life Energy Formulas, all audio and video media published by Vital Life Energy Formulas are protected by copyright with all rights reserved. Any copying or publication of these materials in part or in whole without the specific authorization of Vital Life Energy Formulas is an illegal infringement of Vital Life Energy Formulas copyright. Thank you everyone for joining us today.
Okay, I want to thank you all for being here, and I also want to say that I looked at the beginning of the last video that we did last week, and I was honestly very happy with the understanding of the 5-point star and the colon and how that all works in relationship to the colon, the CC colon cleanse formula, and how energy actually works in the body itself. One reason I wanted today to be able to show you the understanding of ovals is that you will not know or see ovals in any other form of therapy except with Dr. Randolph Stone. And the ovals have a direct relationship to the energy that's between each element or each chakra, from earth, water, fire, air, and ether. The 5 elements are in. And that oval has a direct relationship to the feminine energy, which was what we were focusing on in the colon in the last video. And also, it also shows the relationship, which I keep talking about. I know I'm very repetitive with certain things because it's just, to me, it's so significant, and that's the feminine energy. And that is the colon, and that's the 5-point star, and that's the egg. And that's what maintains life in this universe. It's what makes red blood cells. So these amino acids in these formulations are based on these principles. The oval itself is the relationship of the energy from the egg, from the red blood cells, from the original energy from the mother releasing the egg into the universe to create life, and to go from the original conception and to the actual releasing of the egg as a human being into the air, into the earth plane. Dr. Randolph Stone, in his teaching of polarity therapy, which I was very, very fortunate to come in contact with him, which I've shown you in the books when I was there in the seminar that was in Mill Valley with Dr. Hall, who introduced me to Dr. Randolph Stone. There's a lot of polarity therapy taught around the world since those seminars, and Dr. Stone was doing those seminars with Dr. Hall in Mill Valley. I think one of the reasons that my relationship with Dr. Pierre Pontier occurred, which he was more of the yin energy of Dr. Randolph Stone. Dr. Randolph Stone put the energy out in the therapy, and Pierre actually taught the energy from a yin standpoint, not intellectual standpoint or books and like that, as Dr. Randolph Stone would present it, plus his own understanding of energy and really the chakras, the elements, the Vedas, the relationship of the energy moving from inside out, and the formation of the soul energy in this universe, and how that energy works in this plane. We hear about astrology, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, Aries to Pisces, and in between the mandala, the magnetic energy that flows through those energies, the energy, gravity of the planets that are around us, the moon, the sun, magnetic energy through the whole body. We hear about chakras. You can go on the internet and, see all the chakras, see the prana, just all this information has been put out in the world. The one thing that Dr. Stone related to is the relationship of the element. The energy steps down. It slows down into the physical body. It goes from the center outward, from the head down, and the down back up, and the energy flows back and forth, which I was sharing. As you see in this particular chart, and I want you to understand, most people that have ever thought of or worked with polarity therapy do not teach this understanding of feminine energy, of the energy of an egg, of the energy between each cell, each chakra, each element, the swirling of the egg, the swirling of the energy, spiraling up. And what you see from the top of the head here to the next element, where Lorraine's actually pointing, that the energy in between is the egg, it's the brain, it's the eyeball, it's the cell. As energy steps down, the next energy goes from there, from the head to the throat. And that's the element that's in the throat that also responds to our thyroid as a gland. And most people, where do you hear the thyroid maintains oxygen? It's a governor of oxygen. What do we need as human beings, but we live off of oxygen? We're not plants. We might have been plants in past lives. We're not plants now. We're at the highest level of creation in this universe with a level of discrimination. All other animals and plants do not have the level of discrimination as we have in the etheric energy of life. So we actually have more responsibility in our own environment to take care of the whole planet, the whole energy that we're around to our particular level, our own universe that we live in, not everyone else's universe, but our own. So that etheric energy in relationship to the thyroid as a gland, it's not just giving us thyroxine as a hormone production, because that's what the thyroid produces. It's not just the hormone that the thyroid produces, which is thyroxine. It's the energy that's there in the oval of the egg. And that's the reason women go through such a problem. And it's always picked up medically and pharmaceutically that the women have an underactive thyroid, because it has a direct relationship to her eggs. And that has a direct relationship to the liver and relationship producing red blood cells, which is an egg. It's an oval. Or the eggs that are released in order to be fertilized by the sperm, which is a snake, the caduceus. So those two energies, the sun and the moon, come together, and that togetherness creates the spiraling of the oval. And that spiraling is the relationship of each energy as it steps down. And so we see now from the thyroid or from the throat here. Now we're dealing with this Corona-19, this virus, which again, these are situations which we've taught and understood over many years. And now I'm showing you the relationship of how we have all come, Lorraine, myself, and my family, Len, myself, and everyone that's been involved with our relationship together over all these years. This understanding has been presented to us because we have faith and we have understanding of it, and we use it on a daily basis. And so now as we look at this relationship of the throat, and now we've got the virus stuck down here, and they're sticking stuff down here to see if you've got the Corona-19 virus. We've shown you in the iridology, we can look in the eye and see that a virus if it's active. We can look in the tongue and see if the virus is active. We can't name the virus because it's not just Corona-19. We have the flu virus. Have we heard any levels of teaching about what's happened to the flu? That particular virus that's in the winter and that was in the southern hemisphere, and winter they were going in the northern hemisphere. The readings of that are almost non-existent. Why? You know the answer of that. Why? Is because they're just saying all viruses like Corona-19. But we have 2 or 3 viruses. It'd be Corona 20, 21. Viruses mutate. The Hong Kong flu back in 1968, the SARS in 2002, and now the coronavirus, or 1917, the Spanish flu. They're all related together. They're all parasites, they're all viruses, and they end up where there's lack of oxygen, the thyroid. If we have oxygen in here, the virus cannot live. So what do? I explained to you way back about using hydrogen peroxide. 3% hydrogen peroxide. Again, in Australia, we used 9%, there was 6%, and there was 3%. We always diluted it down to 3%, because that's the level that the body can activate the oxygen. It's not toxic to the rest of the body. That same oxygen that is hydrogen peroxide is also ozone. It's ultraviolet light. And that's something we've been utilizing for years. When I was in New Zealand, I was using ozone. I filtered the water that in the health farm that we had there on Maori land with ozone. So all the water that was drunk at that health farm was ozonated before people drank it. You can now Google oxygen therapy, ozone therapy. It's all over the place. Ozone, oxygen, hydrogen peroxide releases oxygen, and the thyroid maintains it. So if you then gargle the 3% hydrogen peroxide, that gets down here. And now science here in Harvard Medical School and Stanford Medical School, Stanford schools, they have now studied this and realized that 3% hydrogen peroxide kills the virus in 30 seconds. But what is that doing? That's maintaining the oxygen levels that's in the thyroid, that's in the mouth, that's in this element. The top of the 5-point star, the feminine energy, the oval, the egg. In this understanding, as the energy steps down, it goes from ozone therapy, which is oxygen, ultraviolet therapy, all to maintain and level and remove the bacteria, the mold, fungus, viruses, just like when it bleeds out, or we exhale out carbon dioxide, so the level of oxygen can create new cells, and that's the regeneration. So now as the energy steps down from the oval, from there, now we go into the chest, where the thymus is located. And that energy, as it steps down from into the air element, into the energy that's moving there, that's the oval stepping down and creating the form of the chakra, of the element. Every form is feminine. Every form is an egg. Every form relates to the colon, which is the ocean. If we did not have an ocean, we would not be able to live on this earth, because everything came out of the ocean. When we were in the womb, we had gills, which were formed from the egg. And the uterus, and like that, activated the body's ability to form around the fetus as the fetus would grow. that same level of growth we call now cancer when it's an irregular cell. The same growth is the body's ability to be able to absorb the liquid to carry the oxygen into the fetus from the mother to the umbilicus. So back to the oxygen feeding the baby through the gill system. The gill system's the lymph. When genetic iridology came from the original understanding of embryonic iridology from Dr. Jensen, which is dealing with the gill system, the lymph system. Allopathic medicine looks at the blood and looks for disease in the blood. We look at the blood in relationship to the oxygen levels that are in the blood moving through the lymph. The body is made up of 80% water, 20% blood, and 80% lymph. And that lymph is the oval, it's the egg, it's the colon. It's the feminine energy. It's the energy stepping down to activate a form so that the earth, the minerals, can hold on to the liquid, which is the Mother Earth. Mother Earth, not male dad Earth, Mother Earth. So the minerals form around as each energy stepping down from the oval, stepping down to the physical form, which is our skin. And as you see in each of these different formulations that we've created are just mappings of the energy system in relationship to the cells that are in our body, to every gland that's in our body. And the glands come from the hormone production, from the lymph, where 50% is actually the level of energy moving through that gland. And yes, the amino acids activate that, because the amino acids activate the absorption of oxygen. So every gland that we deal with, every part of our body we deal with is made up of amino acids to maintain oxygen and activate the body's ability to activate the circulation of our lymph. That circulation of our lymph is our ocean. That is the gill system. That's a step down of each oval that we see in our body. This is a reason it gets confusing for people in relationship to the ovals, because it's dealing with the feminine energy. It's a step down of the feminine energy into the physical form, which is our physical body, which is the original conception, which is the embryo. Medicine deals with the blood and avoids the lymph. When we're looking into the eye, or we're looking in the energy system of the body, we're looking at the blood, the energy is in the blood, and the energy that's in the lymph. The body's have 8% water, 20% blood. We can see that in the tongue, which you talked about last week. And the mapping of the digestive system. And we can see it in relationship to the lymph, which we're able to see genetically in the eye. And we can see it in every formulation that we deal with energy. As you can start to see and understand the energy system as it steps down. So we go now from the thymus gland, which everything is the 28 days, which is called love. And again, I think I'd mentioned this before, I'm almost sure I did, about the right side being the right side of the energy, male side outgoing, left side feminine. They come together. Autism for all of us, which we're all autistic. We can't just say we're born autistic. All of us get through stress and the energy isn't moving through. The two hemispheres, we're not talking to each other. We're not doing the awareness work that you all need to do to get the energy together, which is our mind. And of course, what does that do? It brings it into the prayer, which is a center energy. It's the prayer of the soul. It's the relationship of the thymus. When we put that left hand here, over here, and the right hand over, we're drawing our energy into our thymus, which is called love. And we're able to draw our own energy because everything is scattered, and that starts to activate the center line. Then we move from the thymus gland of that energy down to the next oval. And that is at the umbilicus, the center of the body. So now we're going from the thymus down to the umbilicus. And the umbilicus is the center body, which is back to the circulation moving all the way around. The umbilicus is what we were centered on. That's we were connected in the embryo. It's the circle of life and love, which Disney made a whole movie on that. So that's the center of the energy. That's our eyeball. That's the pupil. That energy is the center from the top of the head to the bottom. And that's the formation of that oval as it steps down. Let's go to the next one. Right? So now as it steps down for the next chakra, the oval that's below that goes directly from the umbilicus to where the pubic bone is, which is what we talk about so much. Where do we put the castor pack? We put the castor pack from the umbilicus to the pubic bone. Well, what is in the female that's in the pubic bone that goes to the umbilicus? That's the uterus. And that uterus is a muscle that activates the growth when the baby's in the womb and grows. So that energy that we're working with, when we're working with the uterus and working with the colon together, that energy is the oval of formation of the embryonic energy moving through the body in the lymph. That's the reason that the uterus is so important for the flow of the lymph in the female. The uterus is our prostate in the male. And our flow of positive energy to our testes to release our hormone, which is this arrow going to our brain, is our prostate. That has a direct relationship with our hormone production to bring the energy back up into our brain, to bring the cerebral spinal fluid, which is our sperm production, from the testes back into the brain. And that cerebral spinal fluid, which is what the amino acids is made up in the bone marrow to activate life from all these amino acids we're taking to make T cells, stem cells, white blood cells, and red blood cells, which is that flow back and forth, which I talked about before, is now activating the circulation of the lymph in the female to activate her 28-day cycle, to remove the excess estrogen out that's connected to carbon dioxide, which is the mold, fungus, virus, and chemical, to be bled out, or when she's now doesn't have more eggs to release, which are ovaries, which are circles of the oval energy of the body, the feminine energy of the body, which has to work, she has to then remove it out through the natural pathways, which is the breath, the urine, all the different pathways of elimination, the skin. So it has to come out that way. She's still contracting and activating her feminine 28-day cycle. Then we move from there, which is the base, the pubic bone, which is underneath that is the cervix of the female, the prostate in the male. And then we go down into the actual rectum. The next oval goes from the pubic bone to the rectum. So we go from the sacral energy, sacrum energy, from the pubic bone down to the rectum. And that's the earth energy now moving from the sacrum, which activates the circulation, pumping like a dolphin. We love dolphins. It pumps like that and spirals back up, and that's the oval. To the top of the head, which is the caduceus. The kundalini. So as that sacrum pumps, the spiraling up activates the energy in the eye, the oval in the eye, the light, the seeing. That's the reason when a person starts to activate the caduceus, what happens to the eyeball? It goes up. You might have seen it, person that activated, meditating or whatever, or getting the kundalini to activate, the eyeball goes up. That's the oval energy moving up into the top of the brain, to the back of the brain, the hypothalamus, which regulates blood pressure, body temperature, and so on. So now what we're dealing with is the coccyx, and other than people falling and hurting their coccyx and their tailbone, that's as much as they know about the coccyx. But the coccyx is directly related to the earth element, to the minerals in our body, and to the energy moving as a tailbone, which is a way of giving love, kindness, which is we see in the animals and the dogs as they're wagging their tail, which shows that they constantly have oxytocin and love, which we love animals for that. And that coccyx has a direct relationship to the energy of fear. And as you know, when we change and separate the oval of the face, we cannot see a person's oval of the face. We cannot kiss it, we cannot touch it, we cannot feel it. We cannot play with it with, you know, putting in all the legs like stuff, make them look pretty, right? We're now covering it up. So as we cover this up, it's affecting the rectum, affecting the energy moving back up. And as we all know now, there's more schizophrenia, there's more depression, there's more suicide, all these kind of things that are occurring today because we now have moved to this as being our cure of the virus, which is a natural part of nature. Viruses are not evil or bad. They don't kill people. I probably will get screwed up for that now. It'll take us right off the internet now. Exactly, bad boy. So the situation is this, is that the energy moving through, the feminine energy, the oval, the beginning of life, the form, every amino acid that we're giving activates oxygen energy to create a form of each of these different energies. And that goes back to the colon, the 5-point star, the breast, the thyroid, the hips in the female and male. So this oval energy, as you look through and we see the different forms, the same oval goes into the legs from each joint. Yeah, I'm bring it up here, chart. Okay, so you look now, we see.
It's not up here.
No, I want to, you know. So as we go from the pelvic area to the rectum, now the same oval is from the hip across down to the knee.
Oh, you mean this one?
Yes, exactly. So now the energy above of the 5 elements above and the 7 chakras above now are moving down into the formation of what's called the motor part of the body. The legs are the motors, what moves us forward. It's the back part. This is a sensory, this is actually the sensory. This is the motor. We perceive here, we perceive here. Sensory.
Push from the back.
And we push, that's the reason the rear wheel is
soft, sensory, hard, moving, pusher.
Pushing, exactly.
Energy moves out.
So now we're moving to the energy of the oval is moving, pushing the oval energy out, which is now the thighs. I think that's something to do with Sagittarius, by the way. Okay, so the thighs. Then we then go that same energy that's in the hip is in the umbilicus, is in the knee, and now it goes all the way down to the ankle and the calves. And the calves we know when we get cramping, and we think the cramping is coming from a lack of magnesium. The cramping is coming from excess carbon dioxide in the colon. That activates the constriction of the calves, because the colon has a direct relationship to the calves. Then we go to the ankle, and we look at the sacrum, which you look there. That's the next area, which goes back to the original energy of the sacrum being the sacred bone with the dura mater pumping back up. And that's what Dr. Stone's showing in the caduceus, showing that in the actual energy moving side to side, right there. And then it goes back to the fifth cervical. That fifth cervical has a direct relationship to the secret energy of every pyramid, of every triangle in nature. Every cell is made up of triangles. Every leaf is made up of triangles. Every energy that's in our system that we deal with is made up of the sacred triangle, which is the sacred bone or the sacrum, which pumps the cerebral spinal fluid back up. So everything comes back to that principle. So this is the understanding of the ovals, of what Dr. Stone taught. Again, like I said, you probably will not be able to see this or grasp this because it's not normally taught. Because the feminine energy in relationship to energy itself is so misunderstood in relationship to the outer world. But this lesson that you're learning from all of us is the most important relationship to the magnetic flow in our body. We're dealing now with natural healing. And I repeat myself over and over, all healing starts from here, from the absorption of the energy, absorption of life. That's what we're working with. So now as we look at these different formulations, each formulation, the PTC formula, deals directly with the peace, tranquility. Now, right now, we all would love some peace. We all love some tranquility because right now we're not getting any of that right now. But this formulation is based on that principle. And originally, calm, which we got to put calm out now because we need tranquility and we need peace before we can even get to calm. So this formulation is based on that. Go ahead with that one.
Okay, so with the peace and tranquility, you'll see that we have sodium. And the reason that the sodium, which is the sodium ascorbate, or ascorbic, yes, you've got two forms of vitamin C. This has the alkaline form of vitamin C, which is sodium ascorbate. Just like Jeff was sharing about the water, right? That's the reason in this particular formula we have the sodium, because that's our lymph. And that's sodium in the peace and tranquility and calm. That sodium is our lymph to take care of any bacteria. It's essential to have sodium to absorb the amino acids. That's the reason that formula has the sodium ascorbate with the glycine, histidine, and inositol that's in that combination of the peace and tranquility and calm. So the sodium's there. This form is very good for allergies, highly sensitive, sensitive digestive system, anxiety, because anxiety starts in the tummy first. And the essential part of the sodium that's in there is for the stomach, to line the stomach, to go into the lymph, to carry the histidine, to increase your mast cells within your small intestine, which deal with taking care of histamine and allergens, and create your own antihistamine. But also the sodium that's in here, because it's part of the lymph, it carries the histidine into the brain, which stimulates the tranquil alpha waves of your brain. So that is your natural form of oxytocin. The sodium is what carries the histidine directly into the brain to release the tranquil alpha waves of the brain.
See, one thing that Lorraine's telling you about the sodium ascorbate, which is a vitamin C form, which just carries the red blood cells and the oxygen, that actually carries it into the ocean. What's the ocean made up of? Of salt, sodium. That is the oceans are lymph. So this formulation is so important because in relationship to the lymph is where the healing occurs to remove the carbon dioxide out. So more oxygen can actually be penetrated within our brain.
So now we've got inositol being repeated again, right, in the peace and tranquility and calm. And we talked about that in the ally formula, and we talked about that in the liver and pancreas formula. Lung and immune, right, number 3, and then liver and pancreas, number 1. So now we have inositol, more inositol in the peace and tranquility formula with the sodium, with the histidine, and with the glycine. Now this formula is specifically activating the brain and the calming effects on the brain. As inositol, just like we were sharing about methionine back with the heart and muscle formula, HM formula, which methionine, what it does is it activates choline. So the inositol now with the sodium is going directly up into the brain now with the histidine and along with the glycine to stimulate more of the alpha waves, the tranquil alpha waves of our brain. Now, inositol has been known to activate GABA, right? Okay, and GABA is one of those hormones that are in the brain. It's also known as an amino acid, but it activates to slow down the mind. When the mind is very active, there's a lot of mental chatter, which is what's happening today. The mind is, a lot of negative thought processes. That's what we've been working with recently is people are experiencing a lot of negative thought processes. That's the lack of inositol moving into the brain to increase the GABA. And GABA is what slows the mind down, so the mind is not constantly like an obsessive, turning over a negative thought pattern. And it's the inositol that goes into the brain with the sodium and the histidine that makes the GABA to actually switch off that negative thought process.
Now, the inositol, as you know, is in different forms, but inositol is so important because inositol not only activates the body's producing the choline in the liver, and then activating the GABA as the amino acid actually helps manufacture the GABA in the brain, which is the amino acid, which is calming. At the same time, the inositol is what coats the nerves, and the inositol actually goes into the bone marrow also to activate the body's ability to get the circulation moving back up to the brain. And the inositol helps the joints and the rehydration of each joint with the T cells to allow the fluids to activate in the actual joint and also the cartilage and connective tissue. The inositol also helps to activate the liquids that are in our skin, directly relating to that, which is also the liquid in between the joints and like that. So inositol helps that. At the same time as the inositol is doing that, the glycine that's in this formulation is able to remove any of the carbon dioxide and remove any uric acid that's in the liver to metabolize the sodium ascorbate that's in this formulation, the form of vitamin C. So that's, again, it's another form of calming and calming the nerves. What Lorraine said, this formula immediately, you put a little bit on your tip of your tongue, it goes straight to the brain, but also calms the stomach. And in that calming the stomach, the nerves, the stomach, it gets the mucosa to heal and to take away the burning that's coming from the uric acid dumping into the stomach. And that calms the brain and calms the circulation moving through the entire body and the lymph. The histidine is very important formulation because histidine itself as amino acid helps, again, the sodium ascorbate to actually go into the adrenals and activate the calming part. Histidine.
It's a very important part of red blood cells, histidine. Very, very important part of the crib of red blood cells, hemoglobin.
So the histidine activates the red blood cell production coming from the adrenals to the brain to activate oxygen to go into the brain. And again, it helps the inositol to calm the lining, along with the glycine to do what? To help neutralize the uric acid, which is what does uric acid do in the liver? It destroys magnesium, it destroys alcohol. So alcohol destroys the magnesium. This formulation allows the magnesium levels to go up, activates the oxygen, activates the liver to make more red blood cells, calms the stomach, calms the nerves, calms the brain. I think we need more of it.
So there's a lot of histidine, as you know, in the different formulas. And the reason it's very important because it's essential for the metabolism of trace elements. All right, so you'll see we don't use copper, and we don't use silver, and we don't use gold. These are all trace elements, okay? We don't use that in the formulas because you can get too much copper and you can get too much silver, you know, which Jeff will go over the silver part, which is colloidal silver. All right, okay, so Jeff will go over that with you, but you need histidine as an essential amino acid so that the body breaks down the trace elements, so that the copper goes into the spleen, so that the iron goes into the bone marrow, so that the zinc goes into your central nervous system, so your manganese goes into your brain, okay?
So what the histidine is doing is allowing those minerals to actually go directly into the cell carrying the oxygen. So when the virus is in there with full of carbon dioxide and estrogen, it allows the zinc, it allows the copper to go in the adrenals, it allows the zinc to go into the actual virus itself, activate the oxygen. The parasite cannot lay more eggs, and it actually moves out through the natural elimination system through the water and the lymph, which in this formulation is able to help that move through.
So because the histidine's with the sodium, it's very good for the kidneys, takes care of any inflammation in the stomach, example, an ulcer. Also very good for the joints, rheumatoid, which I know these are all diseases that people get treated for. We're not treating diseases, but it means that the actual sodium's not moving into the lining of the joint because there's not enough histidine in the small intestine to carry that sodium to line the joints.
And so again, it's the water. It allows the water to actually activate and create a jello type effect in each joint.
Which is the synovial fluid.
Exactly, 100%. And that same synovial fluid is our skin.
It's the same fluid in your disc, in between each, which Jeff was explaining just about the ovals and the importance of the cervical 5, right? Okay, cervical 5 and the importance of that, which is the neck for all of you, which I will show you the anatomy of the neck in just a sec.
Yeah,
all right, so that's the cervical 5 that Jeff was sharing about and how important that is to the energy in between each of the ovals.
See, the synovial fluid has a direct relationship to aging. As we age, that fluid dries up and we end up
in between each of the vertebrae.
And that's our skin. That's our brain. Aging, when that fluid dries up, creates the wrinkles, creates the arthritis, creates the joints to dry up, the bone marrow to dry up. So that fluid, which is activated from these formulations, from the amino acids, which holds on to the ocean. This formulation holds on to the water, which ocean is made up of sodium. And so that sodium holds on to, and then the estrogen, which we all need. Oh goodness, Jeff, you're saying we need estrogen? You keep talking about estradiol. The estrone and the estrol is the estrogen that holds on to the fluid, to the hormone, to activate the regeneration of the cells and the healing of the cells and the healing of our bones, the healing of our connective tissue, the healing of the energy moving through our body. So as we activate this as an anti-aging regeneration formulation that holds on to the liquid so it doesn't just leak out of us.
Which is, if you do not have enough histidine, then the kidneys become compromised, and that's how people then end up with, you know, the kidneys not dilating, right? Because the kidneys dilate to filter the blood.
So you wonder why we just take more histidine? No, the answer is this histidine is absorbing the sodium ascorbate to hold on to the liquid.
With the glycine, very important, because you have to have the glycine in the liver to make the Most powerful antioxidant, glutathione.
And that glutathione is what activates the body's ability to be able to regenerate the new cells in our body, to neutralize all this chemical xenoestrogen that we're all exposed to, and the fermentation of alcohol. Now, as you know, I make alcohol in my colon, and that alcohol can be made back there, or you can drink it. Either way, every day, when you have alcohol and uric acid formation within the liver, we lose the glutathione, we lose the anti-aging effect, and we all dry up. So we become the earth.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Dan had a question about the gills. Are they part of the lymph?
The answer is yes. In other words, the gills are the actual.
Are they the lymph? Yeah.
No, they're not the lymph. They're separate. They're separate from the lymph. The gills are actually what move the lymph through the upper part of our body. The gills dry out and we end up with lungs. The gills are still there. They're in between.
In between the ribs.
And the ribs, here is where the gills are. And again, as we breathe, as we move the lymph, as the circulation moves through, that lymph is then moving through the gills. Now, toxin, mold, fungus, virus, chemical, carbon dioxide gets stuck in here, and we end up with irregular cells in the lymph tissue. But if we keep moving that through, which again goes back to what we do with the formulations, with the castor packs, with amino acids, with the formulations that we give, that moves the lymph. That moves, opens up the gills, and whatever toxin is in that area in between, we get able to take a deeper breath, get more oxygen. That moves the lymph circulation through our body. So the answer is the gills are still there, yes. They're not part of the lymph, they're separate. They're the embryo.
And then the other question Eva had was, is the ocean your lymph?
Yes. The answer is yes, Eva. The ocean is our lymph. And that's the problem we deal with today. As you know, for all of us, the toxin that we have jumps into the ocean, just like the toxin jumps into our lymph, which is the reason that parasites and viruses have more ability to be able to spread throughout the world. Does that make sense, Eva? Did I answer that? Where are you, Eva?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi. Thank you. That does make sense. I envision it as the whole body is the ocean.
It is. It is. The whole body is the ocean.
So it's just that the lymph is part of the ocean because it's part of the body. But yeah, okay.
That's
I just wasn't quite.
Eva, I keep talking about women, feminine.
70% of the water of our body is lymph.
Yeah, it's lymph.
Hmm.
So yes, the planet, 70% ocean is
yep,
versus
71%
land.
actually, to be exact. 71% of your water in your body is lymph.
And then the land is like, same thing. 71% in whatever, 29% being land. Minerals. Yeah, that's the reason that, again, the movement of the ocean, the colon, everything we keep going over and over and over, but all healing in relationship starts in the ocean, and the movement of the lymph is so important in the colon. That's the reason we know, God, whether you want to go in there and gas up the colon and take a look and see what's going in there. Goodness gracious.
That's a colonoscopy. They put air in there to get a camera through to check the bowel. Anyone else have any questions? About anything, whatever you like.
Can you hear me? Did I unmute myself? Yeah, cool.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm curious about a virus itself, so, and how it actually gets into your body. So, yeah, how does it get into your body? That's about the best way.
Well,
so obviously through the mouth, or
through the air. Like with this particular virus, they're all different forms of viruses, all different forms of parasites. This particular virus is now also in the air, where the SARS virus was not in the air. But when they then, that estradiol, which I keep talking about, that 20%, and when they threw that herpes simplex into this mixture of that particular parasite, then it became airborne. So that's the reason that way back in March and April, we were talking about air filters. We told everyone, you know, this before I even talked about being airborne. We said, this virus is airborne. And sure enough, the scientists caught up to us and said it's airborne. But that was months later. So that's the reason the ultraviolet light, the filtration, like, you know, what we're doing with our program, the HEPA filter, then filters it down to like 1 micron. So and the ultraviolet light actually produces and helps regulate the oxygen from the light. So yeah, it's airborne. This particular pathogen, Corona-19, is an airborne virus versus the SARS, which you had to kiss somebody and basically spit on to be able to pass it from one to another.
It has to have a living cell. A virus has to have a living cell to survive.
That's us.
Okay.
So how? Okay, so yes. So how does it attach to a chemical then?
The chemical itself,
It attaches to the chemical because it mimics a part of ourselves.
which is
It,
estrogen.
it mimics estrogen called xenoestrogen. So that's how it now can attach to the particles. It's very, I mean, it's a micro, you know, it's very small. It's microscopic, you know, it's micro,
Yeah.
I can't say the word properly,
Yeah,
but, you know, it's
yeah.
microscopic, you see. So it's even smaller than bacteria,
Mm.
the viruses. All right.
Right.
So, and it has to have a living cell in order for it to live. All right. So how obviously we're getting this airborne is because the amount of plastics, the birth control pill, all right, and that's the xenoestrogen, and that is a part of ourself. We actually have naturally, also in males, not to the same level as females, estradiol, and xenoestrogen mimics estradiol. So that's how it's spreading rapidly, all right, which viruses do, right? And if you have enough more new cells, more red blood cells, more oxygen, then it cannot live in you.
Hey, let's do another level. We talked about the light, right? We talked about autoimmune diseases, quote, right? Okay? And the light activates the level of oxygen, right? Well, if you get closer to the equator, there's less autoimmune disease, MS and like that. You go further away, there's more. So if we can activate more of the light through these formulations and what we do, we're bringing, even though we might not be at the equator there, young man, we're not there yet. We're not in Hawaii or along the equator, but we're activating the level of light to that level that's at the equator.
Okay.
So what it means is it attaches to the proteins in us, breaks down that protein in us, right? And then uses that machine, as it breaks down the protein in us, uses that in order to survive in us. All right. But if you're renewing through the amino acids, right? You're renewing every drink that you take, you're renewing in the liver, then it can't survive. It can't use the breakdown of protein in us to survive in us.
And the protein it wants is meat protein. Protein it wants is bird protein.
Is fish protein.
Is rancid protein. Okay, I mean, when we eat a steak, it takes 12 hours before we get the single amino acids, which maintains oxygen. So that means it's turning rancid. When we eat fish, it goes rancid within minutes. As soon as the fish is out of the, you know, the water, it goes rancid.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is we're giving unrancid protein because amino acids make protein. If we make the protein, then it makes new cells.
Yeah.
So that's the reason I beg you all, please be vegetarian, to do this work, to live healthily in a world that's turning the opposite.
So, right, okay, can you clarify then what?
By the way, no, just sorry, I got to throw that in there. Thank you.
I only eat. People ask me what I eat. I say nothing with eyes.
That's exactly right.
Exactly correct.
Nothing that looks back at me.
Yeah, that's right. Honestly, please forgive me, but I get sad when I have a bug and I know it's going to hurt me or hurt my family, I got to kill it. And then I do some meditation over that bug because I do. Because for me, please understand, for me, it's a vibration. It's transmigrating. And I wanted to make sure that by me destroying it, accumulate transmigration, it's going to go up into a human form and not some lower form. But that's me. I mean, that's just totally me. But that's how I feel.
Yeah. I usually ask them to leave first, and if they don't, then
No, I know. I do a little talking, but then my family is screaming, "Dad, it's a spider! You gotta get rid of that right away. It's gonna, it's a bad one." Yeah.
So does every virus go through all the what's the right word here? Like the body and brain barrier, all the barriers.
Blood barrier, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
So you mean blood-brain barrier?
Yeah. The answer is yes. Yes, definitely. Because remember, the brain is made up of 80%, 9% cholesterol. And oxidized cholesterol, the virus goes to the brain. We immediately know it. It's called chronic fatigue. As soon as the virus is active, if the herpes simplex is active, we have fatigue. But then that's the reason these formulations, and that's the next formula we're going to be dealing with, the Wu-Wei formula, to help deal with that, which was the original CF2, right?
Number 9.
9, sorry, 9. Right. That's,
Wu-Wei,
forgive
number 9.
Forgive me. 1, 2, and 3, exactly. Anyway, I was thinking of chronic fatigue.
Okay, got
it. Andy.
Yeah.
Viruses, okay, parasites, viruses, worms, so on and so on. They're in the dirt. Why do we have worms? To put air in there, to activate as fertilizer. So they have a part to play in this earth plane. We can't see right now. There's hundreds and hundreds and millions and trillions all these words I don't know about are in the air all the time. We're breathing them in, we're killing them all the time.
It's in the food, it's in the water. As long as you're turning over more new cells, then you're removing them. You do not have it sitting inside you and creating an infestation. You see? And you're going to be exposed to it.
And with this particular virus, it lives off of more toxin. So if you're older and you've got 6 months and you're in one of these nursing homes, you're going to be a good host.
Usually because they're on a lot of medication, you see. All right. So when they're on a lot of medication, they've got more of the chemical, right, for the virus to feed off. Because remember, it attaches to protein and it breaks down the proteins within your body, and then that's how it lives. Breaks it down. You see, that's how it attaches to it.
So remember, if we're taking poison, pharmaceutical medication, then the red blood cells will be used to eliminate that out. But it's not going to be used to make new cells and carry oxygen, which the virus can not live in. Because it wants carbon dioxide. So that's the reason it spreads very easily to the workers and the patients in those nursing homes. Half the people that passed have been in those areas or have that particular condition when they're young.
Which is also why it's not a good idea necessarily to have the flu vaccine as well.
Okay, good question. Okay, we're dealing with any vaccine that we're dealing with mercury. Okay, it's one of the, and in mercury.
There's a lot of other heavy metals in it though. It's not just mercury. I'm just sharing this.
No, I know, but what I say is that the mercury, which is the highest level of mercury that could be used to preserve that vaccine, is the level of mercury that you'd have to be the size of a bull to neutralize it in the liver. So with what I'm saying is with the other pathogens that are in that formulation of the vaccine, then carries that virus directly into the brain and the other areas, which actually activates the detoxification or the, what's that? Autism. Okay. Autism. So that's how it separates that. And then that's the reason the vaccines create that. So that poison goes and separates the central energy that we're dealing with. So yes, that vaccine is highly toxic in the way that they're utilized. It's not our vaccine because we make the vaccine.
Mm.
The T cells, stem cells, white blood cells, and red blood cells, the T cells recognizes it, activates the red blood cells and oxygen, activates the amino acids to be able to fight it, and activate new cells to regenerate, and then we become immunity to it because the spleen now recognizes over that 28 days, the next time we get exposed to it, we get diarrhea. We go, oh my God, I got diarrhea. Oh, but you removed the virus. I got,
One of the main ingredients in a vaccination is formaldehyde.
Mm.
as a preservative.
And that's what, they use to embalm, bodies.
Mhm.
It's embalming fluid.
And formaldehyde is one of the things that Lynn got her cancer from.
Mhm.
Or, developing film.
Yeah, and
That's also the reason we suggest not to eat the eggs because, they use egg protein to preserve the vaccine. So if you're eating eggs and you're exposed to a virus, then even though you've cooked the egg and you've destroyed the biotin, because biotin is a vitamin that eggs have high levels of, but because you've now eaten the egg, it's in the intestine, and then you now are a good host to any virus.
It's also aluminum in there. Aluminum's really good for you.
yeah. Yeah, it falls out of the sky as well. How handy.
That it does.
Yeah, so in other words, and this is one thing that's always intrigued me, but I really just still do not understand or agree with. How is it that everyone has to get the vaccine? Well, I believe I'm a libertarian. I believe people can do whatever they feel to do in their own life, and so on. That's my feeling. So if I choose not to have the vaccine and the other people get the vaccine, well, isn't that vaccine supposed to protect them from me if I do not have the vaccine and I have the virus? Isn't that vaccine supposed to protect them?
Yeah, that's an interesting one because the argument I was given is, but you're also protecting the people who can't have a vaccine, who have conditions, which it's yeah. Well, let's not go there.
No, I understand. I mean,
Yeah.
so in other words, we all have to put our masks on. Sorry, it's going to affect someone else.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, you answered a question that I didn't like the answer, but I understand the answer, which means that if we do not have the vaccine, there's someone that cannot get it, and I'm carrying it, then I'm going to affect that person.
That's right. Yeah. That's what I had thrown at me as anyway. So.
Yeah, well, they're throwing everything, throwing mud anywhere they can, the mud, and see if it will stick. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And anybody else have a question?
Yeah.
Or a statement, or just want anything.
Yeah, I do have a question. It's about the flu shot.
Yeah.
So I'm probably going to be in a situation soon where I'm going to have to start looking at nursing homes. I'm not saying maybe this year or next year, maybe, for my dad. And we can't visit any nursing homes unless we actually have a flu shot. And we've got to show a certificate of actually having it. So what do? Do you just cleanse? The
answer is yes.
Okay.
If you're in that situation where you have to have the flu shot in this case, and yes, then we not cleanse, Monique, will actually activate the liver's production to be able to remove the toxin out, to allow just like we do when a person's taking medication. So we then actually would formulate the formulas and the way we do it to the level of that toxin.
It's where, the clay, Monique, using the clay, because wherever the shot is injected, it builds up, in the lymph in that area wherever they inject the shot. that's
Yeah.
when you use the clay on the shot after you have the vaccination. You take amino acids before you go in, certain amino acids before you have the shot, and then you take the amino acids after, and you take charcoal after. Don't take the charcoal beforehand, you take it after. Take it after because you don't want it before, because you want the immune system to get a little bit of that virus so it builds antibodies. It's
Yeah.
all, it's what it's preserved in that's highly toxic to the body.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to then use the clay after on the shot. You want to take a certain combination of the amino acids, which we'll work out for these vaccinations that are coming up. And then amino acids after with the charcoal after, clay on the shot.
And then because we're
And
doing,
then you would use clay in the evening time to actually drink the clay. All right, so that absorbs any, because they use antibiotics also in the vaccines. All right, so the antibiotic, they actually put an antibiotic into the vaccine. So you want to use the clay to absorb the bad bacteria. There's yeast in it. I mean, there's so many things in it.
I know it's horrible, and I've never had one, and my mum's actually never had a flu shot. But yeah, this is going to be a situation now where, we're probably not going to have a choice.
I totally understand, Monique, and that situation is going to be happening for like children that go into schools have to have all those vaccinations in order to go to school and so on. So yeah, at the same time, as we know, that vaccine or that flu shot is a flu from the year previously. So whether that's going to be good for this year or not, we don't even know it works. The main thing what we're doing is it will, if it is directly related to one of the flus that we're exposed to, you will build immunity with it.
Okay.
But
Okay.
not, it won't. But we just have to neutralize that negative effect, which again, it's also individual, Monique. For the individual that we're working with, we might use a little bit more of this formula, that formula, because of their own personal condition.
Like obviously the peace and tranquility that we just talked about, right? If anyone has anxiety, you take more of that. It's like a stress formula or a rescue remedy,
exactly.
right? That you'd use before and after the shot. And then some people need more of the peace and tranquility, PT, number 8, peace and tranquility, because they have anxiety, so they need more of it in their rescue. And then other people need more of the Wu Wei, which we're going to go over. So it gets modified, the rescue that you're learning about, the rescue remedy or the stress formula, and you regulate it for each individual person. Somebody else, they get headaches, they need to increase the heart and muscle in the stress formula.
You see, also, Monique, we're dealing with the mind and the soul. So the fact that you're doing that for your father in this situation, both you and Peter, or any situation like this for any person having to go into a nursing home and they have to have this shot, the flu shot, then that's love. So that also will help in this whole situation, going from the negative and turning it into love.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome, Monique. Very much. Okay.
Anybody else? Okay. If nobody else has any questions right now, we'll take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back and we'll continue with WW9. I also will show you the cervical 5 in the back of the neck that Jeff was talking about with the ovals. See you in 5. Okay, we're back for part 2 of week 4 of the training seminar. And we're just going to share the screen to show you the cervical 5 that we were sharing with the ovals.
Now, before I go into the cervical 5 to the umbilicus where it shows, and that's the oval, okay, you look at the sphenoid, okay, which is right back here, the sphenoid, okay? The sphenoid then connects directly to the coccyx. So what Dr. Stone is showing you here, the above to the coccyx, which is what I was explaining to you before about the coccyx in relationship to the energy moving back up to the sphenoid. And the sphenoid is your inner ear, but going back and forth. The sphenoid here. Now the same energy that we're seeing that Dr. Stone is focusing on, because he's doing as above, so below. Okay, and he's going now this occiput, which is right back here, to where everything crosses over from here to the cervicals. Okay, there's the occiput. The crossing over, that's like, you know, like, remember I say left hand, right hand. We do the energy balancing, we do that to cradle the skull, to decompress the gravity on the head, or the here as we draw the energy in, crossing over to the thymus, and the energy moving in through the energy of the two hemispheres to neutralize the energy so it moves together. So that's what Dr. Stone's showing, is the occiput to the sacrum. And the sacrum is, remember, is the triangle of the parasympathetic nerves. Now we're all healing needs to be parasympathetic. In other words, just the energy to move in. Sympathetic is the energy moving out. So we heal from inside out, from the head down. So that's what we're dealing with. So the sacrum activates the parasympathetic, which also has to do with the last formulation that we're just dealing with, which is a PTC, peace, tranquility, and a little bit of calm in there, but PT formulation, which has to do with activating the parasympathetic. That's the reason that form is so healing. Then now we're dealing with the C5, which again, remember, it's the energy of each chakra, which everyone looks at. It's the in-between energy from one chakra to the next, or one element to the next, and that's the ovals, which again goes back to everything I talked about, but the feminine energy, the ocean, the colon, the lymph, and so on, where we come out of the ocean. I was just reading, quickly what's going on there, that man, something like 550 million years ago, oh goodness gracious, I think that's beyond what they think. No, but that's actually true. They found a skull of a human that was actually directly related to like an alligator that was in water that moved on to land. And we just brought that up in the New Scientist thing there, which was very interesting, which is what we're talking about. So now that C5 goes directly to the center of the body. That's what Dr. Stone's showing with the oval. So the C5 has a direct relationship to the umbilicus, which is the center of the body, which has to do with every oval, every egg, every circulation of the ocean.
Which is the energy spiraling out from the umbilical.
Which we know. You go to the northern hemisphere, it spirals this way. Go to the southern hemisphere, it spirals that way. Somehow we're spiraling. And that's the oval energy that we're all dealing with all the time, even though and again, that's the eye, that's the egg, that's the brain, everything that's round, that's oval. And that's not the chakras, it's not the elements. It's the oval, it's the feminine energy. Chakras have a direct relationship to the masculine energy. That's the reason it's so prevalent today, which I'm working to reverse that, to regeneration and healing. Okay, so that's that. That's the chart was for that. And now we're going to move into Wu Wei. Now, Lynn and I named this formulation Wu Wei because this formula has a very important aspect of our adrenals to the brain, to the liver. So when the adrenals, brain, and liver are in balance, it's effortless effort. Okay, why don't we go through the formula for me, please?
So Wu Wei is Chinese for effortless effort. All right, so, rather than hitting something head on, is find a way to move around it as a effortless effort. All right. Now, in the formula, and I did briefly write down about guarana, and you'll come across people that are highly sensitive and say, "Oh, I can't have caffeine." All right, I get overstimulated when I have caffeine, and so that's the reason we have also the AB adrenal boost, which was called TRQ, Tranquility number 14. So we have two formulas that have tyrosine, which is actually there's three, but those two formulas will interchange for people. If you come across somebody who says, I can't drink caffeine, I get really anxious, I can't sleep, then we don't use the WW, number 9, or we use a little amount of it, and we build it up for them. The reason that it's an important formula and it's not like caffeine is because it has the oil, castor oil, in the guarana. So the guarana itself has the oil of castor oil. Now, castor oil it has all the omega-3, omega-6 and 9, right? It has all the essential fatty acids. All right, that's what castor oil has in it. And, we don't necessarily recommend a lot of oils for everybody because the liver, which is what Jeff started with. Now, the guarana is an alkaloid where caffeine's acidic. And the guarana is there to carry the tyrosine, inositol, and taurine that's in the WW Wu Wei formula directly past the blood-brain barrier. So because of the oil that's in the guarana, it slowly releases 5 milligrams in the blood caffeine over a 6-hour period. So it's not like a cup of coffee, which releases 80 milligrams of caffeine within 10 minutes, which is the reason people get that quick burst of energy and then they drop. All right, so the guarana releases 5 milligrams over a 6-hour period, so it sustains you. It doesn't release insulin, because that's what caffeine will do. It'll release more insulin. So it helps the pancreas and the pancreatic enzymes. It helps your stomach. In Brazil, they use guarana for abnormal blood clotting, where caffeine heats up the blood. They use guarana for liver cancer in Brazil. They use it for stomach cancer. All right, so it's there with the tyrosine, inositol, and the taurine to open up the blood-brain barrier so those nutrients go directly into the brain, because tyrosine activates dopamine. And dopamine's that, alertness, it's that concentration, it's that drive, which is the original name, was the Wu Wei effortless effort, concentration, and balance. That was the original name. Now we added in the memory, concentration and memory. And the reason being, just like Jeff shared about the adrenals to the liver, is that tyrosine is what activates in your adrenals norepinephrine and adrenaline. So it regulates both of them, norepinephrine and adrenaline. So if you need adrenaline to get up and get going, that formula from the guarana passing the blood, carrying the tyrosine past the blood-brain barrier to go into your adrenals, if you need the norepinephrine to switch you off, to calm you down, the brain knows to send that norepinephrine to stimulate the hormone, because norepinephrine and adrenaline are hormones in the adrenal glands. And the guarana, which carries the tyrosine directly into the brain, then stimulates the adrenals to activate the adrenaline if you need it, or the norepinephrine to calm you down if you need it.
So one of the things that Lorraine just said to you in relationship to the Wu Wei formulation and about caffeine and about insulin. So straight away, if a person says, I'm allergic to caffeine, I do not want that formulation because I react immediately to caffeine. I get a headache. I have these basic symptoms. I get sick.
Anxiety,
I get anxiety. I can't sleep. Straight away, that tells you something about that individual. It tells you a lot about the pancreas, because the problem is not the caffeine. The weakness is the insulin in the pancreas. Now remember, insulin metabolizes sugar into the bloodstream. So the situation is that we're all born with a high or low level of insulin in the pancreas. So that's the reason you can be born diabetic, because your insulin is 0. You don't have any stored in the pancreas, so you have to inject insulin on a daily basis to allow the whole sugar levels to stay in balance. So when a person gets a circulation of caffeine going to the brain, it releases the insulin. So if you have a low level of insulin, what's going to happen? You're not going to sleep, you're going to have anxiety, and you're going to have inflammation and heat in the blood. So straight away, if you have a person that has that symptom, you know that there's a weakness in the pancreas, and so therefore you want to work on the liver and the pancreas and everything we do to activate the pancreatic enzymes so the body can actually balance out the natural insulin. So that's number one. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So tyrosine also activates, melanin, which is in our skin. All right. Melanin is the pigment in your skin, in your hair, all right, as well as your eyes. Okay, it's actually the pigment. So those who actually have darker skin and darker hair actually need more tyrosine because they need more melanin. All right, they are born with a naturally higher level of tyrosine and a higher level of melanin because of being closer to the equator. All right, so they need darker hair, darker eyes, darker skin to block the sunlight out. So those who are further away from the equator don't have as much of the melanin, all right, which is the tyrosine, because tyrosine concentrates in the melanin. Because you're further away from the light of the sun, you need the light of your skin to attract the light because you have less daylight hours being further away from the equator.
So the situation is that tyrosine is not only directly related to the adrenals, but again, when we're dealing with the Wu-Wei formulation, it has a direct relationship to all the glands, from the pituitary, the thyroid, the adrenals, the testes, and ovaries. So one gland can be out of balance, but that means the tyrosine is deficient in all those other glands also.
Because it activates hormone in the thyroid. Tyrosine is part of your thyroid. It's part of your adrenals. It's in your pituitary gland. It's in those three glands specifically, but all glands work together. The secret anatomy, the secret language of your anatomy is all those glands talk to each other. So if one gland is out, all the glands are out of balance, not just the one gland. So any woman that's being diagnosed with an underactive thyroid, that is a symptom of what's happening in the adrenals, in their ovaries, in their hypothalamus, in their pineal, parathyroid, as well as thymus and ovaries.
And the parathyroid, which is not really recognized or really understood, is what assimilates calcium into the bloodstream as your skin.
There's more calcium in your skin than your bones. So that's the reason you need calcium to be moving from the blood into the skin. Every 3 to 4 days, you have a new skin layer. So the parathyroid assimilates that, regulates the calcium in the blood, not only to go into the bone marrow, but also to the skin. You don't want calcium sitting in the blood. You want calcium to move from the blood into the nerves, into the skin, into the bone marrow.
And the parathyroid, again, is so important for the female in relationship to natural estrogen, estrol and estrone, because that's the calcium that's in the estrogen.
So we have the taurine in here with this formula, with the guarana, right? And a lot of us know of Red Bull and people that, I can't drink that stuff. I get irregular heartbeat, my heart starts to speed up, and they think it's the taurine. It's not the taurine, because taurine concentrates in your heart. Mother's milk is 75% taurine. 75% of mother's milk is taurine, which is the reason that's one of the main nutrients that mothers that are pregnant need. They need a lot of it to activate lactation to produce milk, because the stimulation of the nipples in lactation is what activates the cervix to contract and hold on to the new life.
So Lorraine, what makes taurine in the liver?
Methionine and cysteine make taurine.
So then if you have the taurine, the liver will activate and start using up the methionine, the cysteine, which then if you are using up all that taurine, your hair starts to fall out, which is the cysteine. So if you're making the taurine, assimilating the taurine, you regenerate your hair.
So it's not the taurine that causes the heart, to go into arrhythmia or to speed up. It's the sugar or the pancreas weakness, right? With some people who take the, caffeine have a reaction to it because it's a pancreas weakness. It's not the taurine that's causing the heart to speed up or miss, a beat, skip beats, which they think it's the taurine. Taurine concentrates in mother's milk, and taurine's your heart, taurine's your hypothalamus. Because the taurine in the hypothalamus is what regulates your blood pressure, your heartbeat, your water balance, your appetite. So remember, we're needing that amino acid to go into the brain through the guarana, opening up the blood-brain barrier to carry it directly to the hypothalamus. We've covered the pituitary because the tyrosine is going directly into the pituitary. So the tyrosine is going into the pituitary, it's going into the thyroid. The guarana is opening up the blood-brain barrier to carry the tyrosine directly to the pituitary, thyroid, adrenals, and all your glands. And now we're getting taurine past the blood-brain barrier to the hypothalamus. And that stimulates the LH hormone, luteinizing hormone, and the FSH, follicle-stimulating hormone, for both males and females. So then if you need prolactin to be released because you are pregnant, that's what that gland in the back of the brain will activate your pituitary to do, for your uterus to expand with the growth of the baby. If you're not pregnant, then that LH and that FSH hormone will switch on the dopamine and make sure there's no prolactin being released.
So when a person has excess prolactin, which you can see in the blood, that's switching off the pituitary and activating the loss of energy throughout the body, and the body starts to swell up with the prolactin as if they're pregnant.
So now we've got the guarana opening the blood-brain barrier, carrying the tyrosine to the pituitary, carrying the taurine to the hypothalamus. Oh, we've got more inositol in this formula. And we had inositol in LP, number 1, and we had inositol in HM, number 2, and we had inositol in LI, number 3, and we had inositol in PTC, number 8. So now we've got it in the WW, but we have guarana. So where is that inositol going to go to? It's going to go straight to your pineal gland. So we've now covered the major glands, right? Okay, hippocampus, hypothalamus, pineal, and the pituitary, which is the reason that formula, I mean, I love the Wu Wei formula, all right, because I know every time I'm mixing that powder, it's going straight to all of those glands. It's going straight to the pineal, which is the regulator of all the glands. This is the master gland to send a signal to release the hormone in the glands. That's the reason the pituitary is called the master gland, but it's not the regulator. It's not the conductor. The conductor is your pineal gland. That's the conductor.
And the pineal gland is the top of the Christmas tree, the star. It lights up the rest of the tree.
So the inositol that's in the WW goes into the pineal to activate the release of melatonin. So we've got now dopamine in the pituitary, okay? We've got now the pineal and melatonin. We've got tyrosine in the adrenals for norepinephrine and adrenaline.
Now, again, the beauty...
And we got the taurine in the hypothalamus, okay, for the FSH and the TSH. FSH and LH, sorry, luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, which is what males need to get the circulation down to the prostate every day to regulate the sperm production in your testes to wake up with the erection. It's what females need to regulate their ovulation or to activate the nipples to produce milk, lactation. That's WW9.
That formulation is quite important because it does pass the blood-brain barrier. It has the guarana in it, which has the castor oil in it, which activates all the essential oils that we need in all the glands. It has the inositol in the formulation to neutralize any schizophrenia or autism. It has the taurine to also activate the T cells to go into every joint and to rehydrate the body to lengthen it, which we tell people to take their height and then a month later take their height again, and of course they expand. They lengthen as that fluids in each vertebrae. That formulation carries all the other formulas through the entire body and carries those same formulas to pass the blood-brain barrier. So that's the reason that formulation, when can be used, is so important for all the other formulas that we use.
Does anyone have any questions?
Excuse me, sorry, I did that again.
Anyone have any questions? Anything at all? about WW9.
You mentioned the castor oil, so that's obviously there's a relationship with the castor packs, and and you also said about not using a lot of oils internally. So you can obviously eat castor oil.
No, you can't.
You can't, right?
Well, you could. You could.
Yeah.
If you were born and raised by a mother in the 30s and 40s, maybe 50s, I'm not sure.
50s,
Yeah, 30s, 40s, and 50s.
Yeah.
They would give castor oil.
I remember my mum saying she used to get a spoon of castor oil. That's why I asked that. Yeah.
So you see, castor oil, okay, is antiviral.
It's a purgative, so it purges, right? Okay, that's what it does. It's a purgative. So that's the reason it's known, you know, to bring on labor for women who are overdue, right? Okay, so it's a purgative. So what Jeff's sharing is that the guarana, because it's a purgative, it, you know, goes into your liver, and we're all so overloaded with so much xenoestrogen, you can't regulate how much that oil will dump and stimulate the gallbladder to dump, and all that toxin's going to come out. You're going to get sick from your own detoxification, which is the reason we don't recommend drink it. Okay? Because remember, just like Jeff shared last week, 90% or 95% of the Western population have a gallbladder, you know, problem, right? Have an imbalance, right, with the gallbladder. The gallbladder is backed up, and as the, you know, xenoestrogens and the reabsorption of the xenoestrogens from the colon, because that's what we talked about last week, through the portal veins back to the gallbladder, that's backed up the gallbladder. That's the reason oils, we don't use a lot of oils. We recommend a lot of oils for people to take, because the liver and the gallbladder, you know, these oils are easily oxidizing internally, and the gallbladder is so backed up, and people are actually getting sick, all right, even though it's a really good oil that they're taking, because the liver and the gallbladder is so backed up from the chemical and the xenoestrogen, the oils are easily oxidizing.
And the beautiful thing about the Wu Wei formulation, the castor oil, is not oxidized.
It doesn't oxidize. So it's such a thick oil, it does not break down in the presence of heat and light.
And that's the reason that the castor oil that goes into the liver, and with the caffeine, then releases the caffeine, you know, 5 milligrams every hour. So slowly.
So in the bean, right, because it's a, you know, it's caffeine, you know, the bean, right, naturally, right, in the guarana pod, in the plant with the pod, is castor oil.
So the castor oil in the herb, in the plant. So if you were to Google and look at the ingredients of, which I did, and understood that, then we then knew that castor oil would actually cool the body down. So just, and if we cool the body down, what is that going to activate? The parasympathetic nerves.
It's not a stimulation.
So it's a
like
healing.
caffeine.
So it's just so, and then, like I said before, if we have that with the other formulations, then it's going to keep those amino acids working for 5 hours. So we're all hypoglycemic within 3. We need glucose for 3 hours. So that's going to help the glucose levels stay, you know, up through our bloodstream and our lymph. So that's the significance, and that's the reason, you know, we love that formulation.
We love all of them.
We love all of them, but we love that formulation. love, right? We love everything, but we love. But that formulation helps the circulation. And again, the tyrosine that's in that formula helps the tyrosine that's in that 14 into the tyrosine alanine glycine histidine.
That's also in the PA, which is number 19 and number 18, allergy support and anti-aging longevity formulas.
So in the PP formulation, all right, PA formulation, that formula has the B vitamins, it has the glutamine, has the amino acids.
Has the tyrosine, glutamine, cysteine, methionine.
I mean, God bless it. But those amino acids metabolize the B vitamins. And then you throw in the zinc in there.
And the manganese.
And the
biotin, alpha lipoic acid.
There you go. That's the word I was trying to come up with. Okay. Which is another form of glutathione. So that's the reason just a pinch of that formulation is so powerful in relationship to the liver to give you energy. We need B vitamins to activate our adrenals. We need sodium sorbate to activate our adrenals. We need sodium to activate the lymph, the water in the body, the ocean. We need the sodium to neutralize any bacterial infection or viral infection. You see, so then that formulation with all, and we need the quercetin, rutin, and aspirin, which is in the
It's in the
hair, skin, and nails, and it's in the
kidney and bladder. or
kidney-
blood purifier.
kidney and bladder formula. So that's the bioflavonoids, which again opens everything up. So the bioflavonoids are part of our adrenals with the tyrosine, histone, and glycine. So you have the bioflavonoids, which are part of the orange, the lemon, that's the white part. So if we take ascorbic acid or we take sodium ascorbate by itself, not mixing with amino acids, without the bioflavonoids, it causes inflammation. It actually has the opposite effect. The diarrhea that they're getting from taking ascorbic acid is actually a poison. You can Google that and find that out without the bioflavonoids. It has the opposite effect. So they get the diarrhea and they get the poisons to get reabsorbed.
Anyone else got any questions?
Oh, I said one other thing that deals with this. Ester C. I'm listening to the radio and I'm just, listening to
Ester C, which is ESTER.
Ester C. Okay, they're now advertising.
And there's also calcium ascorbate. That's the other one.
Yeah.
These are called slow release forms of vitamin C.
Okay.
Okay.
So now they're promoting this on the radio big time, advertising it. And my problem is I'm listening to sport. I like listening to sport. I like listening to sport. Sport's been a bit hard these days, but I'm listening to the World Series here in America. You got your rugby, not the rugby, down there in Melbourne. AFL, thank you. Okay, so I'm listening to sport. Of course, they advertise now this Ester C. They say, oh, this is great. It's the best vitamin C you can get because it's long term.
It's a slow release.
Slow release over 24 hours.
It stays in the blood for 24 hours.
So it's saying it's now to boost your immune system over 24 hours. So that utilizing the Ester C as a way to promote that it goes to help your immune system.
I know we've gone off the Wu Wei, everyone. We're on to vitamin C. So.
Yes, we are. So the situation is that the calcium ascorbate now stays in the system and actually causes an inflammatory response over that long period of time. So it actually activates the uric acid that goes into the system. So that's the reason we never utilize that calcium ascorbate in our formulas in relationship
or
to
Ester C.
Ester C.
We don't recommend those vitamin Cs. When we go through anyone taking other supplements, because a lot of people are taking different supplements, they're one of the supplements that we say to stop straight away, is the Ester C. You just basically ask them, are they on a slow release form of vitamin C? Because that means they're either getting Ester C or they're getting calcium ascorbate. How it works, it actually swells the colon. So it actually goes into the colon, swells the colon and releases from the lining of the colon, which is the small intestine, releases the vitamin C into the blood over an extended period of time. But now because it's swelled in the intestinal lining, then you're losing your minerals. You become more dehydrated.
And that's the bloating and that's the inflammation that people get. And that's the reason that when I listen to this commercial, which I listened today and the day before, because the World Series is playing every day, and that commercial comes on, I go, oh God, please. So I know the effect of that. So there we are. I just wanted to share that. World Series.
Eva, you had a question?
Thank you. Yes. Just about the Wu Wei and how always I would not be taking that before bedtime or late in the day. And then occasionally you will add that into the last drink at a smaller rate usually, I would, yeah, from my experience. So why is it that you would add that at that time in the day?
The situation is that what we're dealing with the Wu Wei formulation is it actually activates the parasympathetic nerves. So it's actually calming. So in the individual, some people, because remember the pancreas with insulin, so any caffeine that they get is going to stimulate them. So even the low level of caffeine that's being released, 5 milligrams, is going to stimulate them. Plus, them even reading the bottle that says caffeine in there, that's going to stimulate them. So as you know, we'll put in the stress formula at the Wu Wei formula. And they're taking at bedtime, they're taking middle of, 3 a.m. and so on. So you go, why is that in the stress formula and I'm taking it at 3 a.m.? Because it does just the opposite, it calms you down.
Remember, it regulates norepinephrine and adrenaline.
Okay.
So do I take that at night? The answer is yes. Do I have a weakness in my gallbladder? No. Do I fall asleep easily? Lorraine can attest for that. That's the gallbladder being healthy. You see? So people that cannot go to sleep have inflammation in the gallbladder, and the gallbladder is calcified from the excess estrogen coming back to it from the portal veins. But over time, that same formulation will clear that out.
Sometimes it's put in the program to increase the hormone releases in the bedtime mix. That's the reason I've added in at certain times for people, is to actually stimulate the hormone releases.
And remember,
and that means more tryptophan, you see. All right, so that's the reason sometimes I'll add it in and then I'll take it out, depending, on obviously through the analysis and, that hormone releases have been stimulated and we don't need to add that back in the formulas. There's no problem to take it in the stress formula at any time because it's going to regulate both adrenaline and norepinephrine.
Yeah.
Because that norepinephrine is part of the cycle of REM, all right, again, which is the REM cycle of sleep, the different phases of sleep cycle, you see. All right, so that's the reason that it will help with sleep, not the opposite. But some people who have like such a dehydrated pancreas, they can't have any level of stimulation because they do not have the pancreatic enzymes to break down any sort of sugar to convert it to ATP.
So the situation is that the actual formulation will have that different effect. And so we just need to see what's happening with the individual at that time. Because sometimes it'll actually help the gallbladder to release the bile and then releases the hormone because
actually help the pancreas.
Yeah, so it helps the pancreas, so then releases the hormone, and that first hour and a half after sleep is when it releases the hormone, growth hormone. So that can actually help the growth hormone to be released because, to again go back to the understanding of amino acids in relationship to glucose. We're all deficient in glucose after 3 hours. Nature's designed the mother to release the glucose over 3 hours in the breast milk and then breastfeed the baby again. So all human beings are hyperglycemic in 3 hours, but the first hour and a half of that mother is releasing the growth hormone in that baby so that the next level of the next hour and a half is the elimination of the toxin, the carbon dioxide and toxin out when the baby poos in peace and the mother breastfeeds again. So we're all in that same situation.
You're saying about sleep cycle with that, first 1.5 hours of sleep cycle. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
And also what we're dealing with is that if a person's unable to go to sleep straight away, that symptom, they all go, I can't fall asleep. I'm just up all night, or to 3 a.m. before I fall asleep. And the reason is because the gallbladder has calcified from the excess estradiol going to it. So that's something we want to slowly work on to help that person switch on because as soon as the gallbladder releases the bile, we go into a subconscious state. Relax.
Mhm. Thank you.
You're welcome, Eva.
I also have a question regarding the
Hi,
WW formula.
Hi,
How you
Matt.
going?
Good.
Given my understanding is the guarana in the WW formula, which you were saying allows the tyrosine to go past the blood-brain barrier into the hypothalamus, where we're able to produce those benefits of taurine, and then through the pituitary, the dopamine and the prolactin.
Yeah.
Given the benefits of the taurine, given those benefits to, say, of the prolactin and the taurine for expectant mothers, just wondering, do women that are, if a woman's pregnant, given the existence of the guarana in that formula, should it still be taken?
It really depends upon the individual, Matt.
The reason we don't generally put it into the formula for a pregnant woman is because a woman will only, never ever produce the level of growth hormone and the level of progesterone that's being boosted in a female when she's pregnant, unless she's pregnant again. So that's the reason we actually don't put that in the program for a female, because they're producing so much, the more higher levels of hormone, and it's not absolutely essential to get the tyrosine to pass the blood-brain barrier, like, with the guarana, for example. All right. So there's a reason that we just remove it out of the program for a lot of, expecting mothers, because of the hormone levels that are actually boosted with pregnancy.
See, when you're pregnant, everything's opposite. So when you're pregnant, you don't release any dopamine. Remember? The tyrosine, and we want to activate the dopamine to get the circulation moved down. So that formulation will help that. It will work. But we want the opposite effect when a woman's pregnant. We want the energy to actually activate prolactin, not reduce it, because the prolactin is the uterus growing with the baby. So the prolactin activates the uterus to grow.
Yeah.
So that's and again, that's all. That's
So with taking that formula, if say a lady was taking a formula before the WW consistently before becoming pregnant, that would be very beneficial, even though you'd stop taking it during pregnancy?
The answer is yes. And also, again, we're dealing with individuals. Remember, some people, we won't do that because there's a high level of adrenaline, or we will use it sparingly. But then again, as far as pregnancy goes, or falling pregnant, or activating the natural 20 milligrams of progesterone, which activates the pregnancy, that actually helps that happen. Then everything switches after that.
And some women will take it through pregnancy too, Matt, just because they have more, the pancreas is more dehydrated, and it actually helps, hormone in the ovaries, because insulin's hormone, you see. So it's an individual, some women will take it through pregnancy to stimulate the pancreas, the insulin in the pancreas to activate the progesterone in the ovaries, so that the hypothalamus then, to the pituitary, then stimulates the release of more prolactin. So it's an individual. But generally, for everyone that falls pregnant when they're on the program, we just remove that formula out.
Okay.
And the other thing that's really interesting to me is that women that have been in IVF, and then they, were able to, have the IVF fertilize and have a baby, and they do the program and go back onto the Wu-Wei formulation, and all of a sudden they're pregnant because they're able to remove the excess estrogen out, and the insulin levels came into balance in their pancreas.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome, Matt.
I have a quick question.
Yes, Diane.
Yeah, I love all.
Sorry.
That's all right. Formulations too, and I'm yearning for one of your energy balancing treatments. And since I physically can't get one, I just want to know what, obviously I do castor packs and baths and all that, but what can I do, or what can we do to ourselves as an energy balancing treatment?
One is we're going to be going over that in the play therapy section.
Okay.
That's one. Two, I've already been starting to teach that. Remember about this together and about this. That is one basic energy that we can do to draw the energy into our heart and our thymus. Again, we have also said you can put your hand right above your pubic bone, right? To your umbilicus, the right hand. And you can put the left hand up here and you can rock yourself back and forth, which is like doing what we call a rocking perineal.
You can also do one, you lay on your side, okay? You put one hand, where the butt cheek is, your right hand, so you lay on your left side.
Yes.
Okay? And you put your right hand on your buttock, and you take your left hand, you're laying on you, and you put it behind the ear.
Okay.
And then you rock yourself, you're laying on your side. We'll take a video so that you can all see that.
We'll
okay?
show that for sure.
All right, because that's the perineum that Jeff's sharing. Okay.
See, in the womb area, okay, in that area there, you have the perineum, which is the perineal nerves, which are again the parasympathetic nerves for relaxation. So Dr. Stone would teach actually getting the blood. That's the reason when you put the hand up underneath where the perineum is and make that contact in the buttock. Okay, then that area, then you get the blood to flow in that area, and then the energy moves up into this here, which is the energy moving up into the area of the cervicals, which we've discussed before.
Cervical 5 that we're talking about.
We were talking about. So by doing that, that activates the parasympathetic nerves, and you fall asleep. I mean, you just totally relax.
It's very calming.
It's very, very calming. So someone that has a lot of hypertension or just you want to calm the person after.
Remember, you go into the fetal position. Wherever you're bringing everything back to the umbilicus,
your knees
where the
back.
energy flows, spirals right from there, which is the reason we share that healing occurs from inside out, right? Because it's got to move back into the umbilical, spiraling out. So that's what the actual perineum treatment. So you're actually helping yourself with that treatment.
Now remember, when you're also doing your enema, you're activating the perineum also, because the rectal area there is right next to the perineum. As you get the blood to circulate in there, that's the reason it's relaxation doing your enema. So the key to that whole thing, which is what Dr. Stone really taught, is about the circulation of energy and blood to flow into the perineum to activate the dopamine levels and to activate the parasympathetic nerves that are in the occiput and the energy moving through the thyroid and nola glands.
We haven't had a chance to go over the cranial,
Oh
which
yeah,
is the chart, because we're nearly out of, we're over time now.
Okay.
All
Well,
right,
why don't you throw the chart? Do you have the chart?
No, I don't. We'll do that next time round.
Okay.
Because I want to get through everyone's questions.
Yes, go ahead, sure.
Anyone else have any questions? Did that answer, Dion?
Yeah?
Yes, thank you.
Good. You're very welcome.
Anyone else? We've got time. I'm just aware of,
Quick question: is that perineum that you're talking about generating the energy down there? Is that, if you like, the mirror opposite of that that sixth ventricle or fifth ventricle, that crossover at the occiput that you're showing on that chart of Dr. Stone's earlier?
Yes, the answer is yes.
Okay.
it can be anything. It doesn't have to be about what we've talked about. You can ask any question you like.
We're here for you.
Okay, so did you want to explain it, start on the cranial? I just want to make sure everyone's questions
No,
are
okay.
answered.
Yeah. Do you have that chart?
I'm not sure what chart you're talking about.
The head,
Okay. Oops. What happened here?
Okay. We brought this picture up basically just to explain and show you the different areas of the cranial bones and how they are. You see the sutures in between the bones. They're like islands. And the energy actually moves straight up from the sacrum, then making those islands move, and they're moving all the time. And where there's a compression, then the energy actually slows down and compresses, and then the circulation starts to actually impede upon the brain in relationship to release its natural hormone production. So the more that the cranial bones are able to move, and they're like little islands, and they represent the islands that are in the ocean, those cranial bones do. So as the cerebral spine is flowing up, then the cranial bones actually move, that moves the energy, that activates the circulation to move through, and activates the circulation to move from the sacrum back up, which is spiraling up to the top, and then those cranial bones are moving. Now, when they're compressed, that's a shock that activates the circulation weakness in the spine, and the inflammation gets stopped, so then it moves out, so it can become a blockage in the different lower vertebrae. But if you then activate the circulation in the colon, the lower back, the sacrum, that gets the circulation moved back up, when we lengthen from the amino acids in the liver, regeneration of light, then the cranial bones start to heal and activate, and they become in balance. So you can see we have there
There are 8 cranial bones.
8 cranial bones that we're working with.
We teach you a lot about the sphenoid, okay, the sphenoid bone, and the cranial, like obviously the different cranial bones that are moving. All right, they're not fused. Just like when a baby's born, you see the top, you know, it's open and you see it pulsing. All right, it's not hard. You see the top of the, you know, the crown. All right, it's soft at the top, and you always protect that area when you have a newborn. So the bones are actually moving. They're moving as we're all, you know, talking right now, with the sacrum, in synchronization with the sacrum. So the sacrum moves like a dolphin's fin, and then those bones move up and down the islands, all right, the 8 cranial bones, the islands, and they're moving. And then that's how the sphenoid moves back and forth, you see? It goes across, like the sphenoid, you got the occiput, right, the base of the skull. The knob where the skull sits on top is the occiput, and the sphenoid just sits above that and goes around the skull and moves back and forth with the cranial bones in the top of the skull that move up and down. That's how this moves back and forth across the forehead, your cheekbone, your forehead, to your ear, to your jaw.
So when like the soft part you see with the baby, in that it's still open when a newborn baby, and then it slowly closes up, that actually is you're seeing the pulsation of the soul life energy pulsating up and down the spine. And the actual soul energy itself is not totally formed into the physical body until that closes up.
So that we have a start to next week.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
That bones that you were talking about closing up, are you referring to the fontanelle?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great, everyone. That was awesome. That concludes today's training. Next week, we will go with the stem cell formula, which activates the creatine, and the cellular energy, which was the ATP number 10 and MT number 11.